So I see, you see, we all see CCCs. It's finally time to talk about See's Candy, the one topic I've been wanting to cover since day one of this god-awful podcast.
And I forced you to talk about the library.
Yeah. I don't want to talk about candy. I want to talk about books.
Books.
Oh, we want to talk about books? You want to get chocolate all over my book pages?
Them books go on fire.
So let's start at the beginning with the dowdy woman we all recognize and love's son. Charles A. C., born March 15th, 1882 in Ontario, Canada.
Chuck C.?
Chuck C. Charles grew up to be just what you expected him to be, a pharmacist. He ran 2 pharmacies in Ontario that had signs on them advertising pills and things. But then fire purified all, eh? On July 11th, 1911, forest fire struck the area, burned down both of his pharmacies. He himself barely managed to survive it by taking his wife and their 3 kids and wading into a lake and waiting for the flames to go away.
Wow, that's dramatic. Can I make a...
He's being real dramatic.
When both your pharmacies burned down? Suspicious.
Yeah, that is when both your pharmacies and half the county line.
Suspicious.
I see what you're doing.
That's what the cop says when they arrest him. Something's a little suspicious here.
I
did it.
I'm a good, honest Canadian. I'm sorry. Well, you got away with it because you confessed. This was when Charles decided to switch careers to something even more vulnerable to fire, chocolates.
Oh.
He became a sales representative for the Merkins Chocolate Company in Toronto. He sold raw chocolate to candy companies like Laura Secord, which was basically, it seems like the Canadian equivalent of what See's is. Mm-hmm. He had an affinity for chocolates that he had inherited from his mother, Mary. She was born in Ontario, Canada, also 1854 as Mary Weissman, until she married a man named Alexander C. in 1874 and became Mary C. Together they ran a hotel on Tremont Park Island where she started making chocolate candies for the hotel. She and her husband did.
This is in Canada?
In Canada. However, Alexander went to the big assorted box of nuts and chews in the sky in 1919, and so Charles decided to take his mother in, and not long after decided it would be best if all of them just moved someplace else, away from these suspicious fire marshals.
Fire and let's go.
They wanted to go someplace warmer, someplace without wildfires. So in 1921, the See's family moved to 462 South Marengo Avenue in Pasadena, right by the Halloween house. Yep. But Charles came to Los Angeles with more than just a Canadian inclination to wearing flannel in warm weather. He wanted to open up a candy store, a la Laura Secord, where he sold chocolates from the recipes that his mother Mary is making. So that same year, with the help of a guy named James W. Reed, who falls out of the picture pretty quick here. What, you recognize that name?
One of the survivors of the genre party.
Oh, really? No, that's him.
James Reed, he went and moved on to...
He was so hungry, he needed to open up a chocolate store. He opened up the very first See's Candies at 135 Western Avenue North in what is now kind of the outskirts of Koreatown. It had a black and white checker design that all the stores still have today that was modeled after what Mary's kitchen looked like in their Pasadena home. So that's why it looks like that. The store even had a portrait of Mary C. up on the wall that all the stores still have today. And Mary C. was only 65 when she moved to LA, so she can't have been happy with how that portrait portrays her. She is looking dowdy.
Maybe you guys want to take a picture? People have pictures now.
Technology is here. Maybe take off 400 years. The candies themselves were, like I said, all her recipes, and Charles insisted on using only the finest ingredients. They were referred to as being even above top quality. This was See's quality. Ooh. Charles' motto was quality without compromise, which is still their trademarked motto. The candies were so good that they became very popular, and on top of that, Charles C. was a really good businessman, so he knew how to grow the brand. Pretty soon after this, they opened up a second location, which might have been attached to the Chinese Theater, and then they opened one at Hollywood and Vine, and then one inside the Roslyn Hotel downtown. And in 1925, they already had 12 locations in Los Angeles, and people loved their chocolate. They even started selling ice cream in some of the stores, which I really wish they still did that. In 1928, they started making candy deliveries in a custom-built Harley motorcycle driven by an employee named Hugh Fry with a little mini See's candy shop as a sidecar.
Oh, that sounds great.
I know.
Imagine a siren.
Chocolate,
chocolate. Oh, someone's going.
Oh, no.
Get a tip ready.
Do the sign of the cross. Business was booming, and then the Depression hit. Stores were closing left and right, most of all frivolous things like candy shops. However, Charles C. was smart, and he managed to convince the landlords of his stores to lower their rent until things got better, arguing that low rent is still better than no rent, and they actually agreed to this.
Wow, that's a good argument.
That's their new motto. See's Candy. Low rent or no rent. Still wasn't enough, though. They had to cut their prices from 80 cents a pound down to 50 cents a pound. This was a price cut lower than any of their competitors competitors, and they were still making a higher quality chocolate than everyone else. But the real thing that saved them was that they started offering bulk pricing. So if you bought 50 pounds or more, the price per pound dropped to 42.5 cents. So this brought in a lot of business from local organizations that would buy the candy in bulk and then sell it at their fundraisers for profit. So with these tactics, not only did See's manage to survive the Depression, they had a huge expansion during the Depression.
That's really hard to do.
It's hard to expand when you're depressed, unless you're eating a lot.
Which, speaking of all this chocolate, speaking of how sad I am.
On November 24th, 1931, they opened Mary C's Sunlit Candy Studio. I emailed them to figure out where this was. Yeah. They never responded. My email went straight into a cherry cordial. Somewhere in LA, it had a big open window facing the street so you could look into their kitchen and watch them making all the chocolates. This grand opening was a big gala event with searchlights and celebrities, but really it was done just in time for the 1932 Olympics, of which See's was a sponsor. They were getting their name out. The Olympics brought a more broad exposure for them outside of LA, which helped them grow even more. They got big enough to open up an entire factory near USC during the Depression. Then between 1936 and 1940, they were able to expand out of LA city limits and opened up 18 of Mary C's dainty white shops in the Bay Area of San Francisco.
Why? Why not stay here? Why not keep it local?
If a business stays stagnant, it's no good.
No, stay stagnant.
If a business stays stagnant, that's good business. That's the C's way.
I'm picky. I demand loyalty from businesses. That's really great. It's so hard. Like, I've been watching the Dust Bowl from Ken Burns. The idea that anyone was making money.
I know that he was raking in money and building. He built like 40 new locations.
Like imagine like in the Depression and just everything feels like everything's financially broken. Yeah. Like I'm opening a new store.
Like C's candy in the middle of a dust storm.
You just hear like the hammering of a new construction of a frame of a building, and people like coming from like.
Can I have a job? Can I do that?
I can do that for a nickel.
Now that they had it in San Francisco, this positioned them nicely to be part of the 1939 World's Fair in San Francisco, where they set up a candy-making kitchen display, which now made them a national name. The Great Depression turned out to be just that for them in the end, a Great Depression, because it was great. Sadly, on July 31st, 1939, Mary C. herself passed on to that great nougat in the sky. But Charles kept the business going and maintained his mom's original recipes. And then World War II hit, and they needed sugar and chocolate to make into bullets. So everyone started being rationed on those things, and that is not good when your business relies on sugar and chocolate. But Charles always insisted on only the highest quality ingredients. Instead of using inferior quality ingredients to keep up with the demand, instead he decided, we're still going to use the best, but since we have less of the best, we're just going to make less candy. They still made good candy, just less of it. They had limited supplies and the stores would close when they ran out, and that would take like 2 hours. But that drove up the demand really high, so there were lines out the door every day of people hoping to get in there in time to buy a box of chocolates.
And those lines still exist.
Yeah, there's still. I have a ticket. The war could have been done so much sooner if people weren't waiting in line for C's candy chocolate.
You have a notice you have to serve. You have to go to San Diego in the morning and fight the Nazis. But I'm in line.
I'm sorry, sir.
Forgive
Hitler
me.
Can wait. So they managed to stay afloat and were very popular during the 40s. But again, at the end of yet another decade, another member of the C family passed on to that giant space cordial. Charles himself died November 6, 1949. He's buried at Forest Lawn, Glendale. Taking over the company for him was his son Lawrence, who maintained their quality and reliability but brought them to the next level. That same year that he took over, a C's Candy float appeared at the Rose Parade, which it brought them their first TV exposure. The float was a giant rabbit pulling around that looked like a giant frog. I don't know why.
You don't know the old rabbit and frog story? The shapeshifters? You don't follow Native American myth stories?
Haven't you heard the old fable of the C's chocolate and the rabbit and the frog? Then once this became a thing in the 50s, he started putting C's in shopping malls all around the state, which is now a signature of theirs. Then in 1961, he opened up the very first C's outside of California in Phoenix, Arizona, inside of a mall. In the 60s, he also got the company doing mail orders around the country, and they became the first company to have all their chocolate delivered to their factory as a liquid in tanker trucks, which is something that they still do. This led to an accident of my dreams. In 1994, when one of the truck drivers fell asleep while he was pumping the chocolate into his truck, spewed out and flooded the street in chocolate.
Wow.
Yeah, I would be there in a heartbeat with the sharpest teeth.
Fighting through concrete.
I could still taste some chocolate. But of course, he can't end a decade without a death. And in 1969, Lawrence died, and the company went to his younger brother, Harry, who I guess didn't like chocolate that much.
So one of the kids, Lawrence C., it's Harry C.
Yeah.
Larry and Harry C.
Larry C. Harry C. I see what you're doing.
Okay.
Harry C., we put the company up for sale. This could have been a very bad thing. Luckily, January 1972, is sold to someone who is not only a fan of their business model, but also of their peanut brittle. Warren Buffett.
Really?
Warren Buffett owns See's Candies.
Stop that.
It's weird, but it's true.
That's so weird.
He put people in charge that were already a part of the company and even had worked with the Sees and let them keep up the good work. Just do what you're doing.
Yeah, do what you're doing, yeah.
But having such a major investor behind them also allowed for new expansions for the company. They opened up their first international location in Kowloon, Hong Kong in 1976. 1985, they started making their truffles, which I can't believe they were around for 60 years before they started making truffles. In 1995, they got a website which you could order from. In 1998, they opened up a special factory in Burlingame, right near San Francisco, that focused entirely on making a new product of theirs, lollipops.
Oh, yeah.
So all the lollipops are made in that factory. On National Lollipop Day 2012, which we all know is June 20th, See's set the Guinness World Record for the biggest lollipop ever made. It was 5 feet 11 inches tall, which is as tall as I am, and it weighed 7,003 pounds, which is way lighter than me. It was a chocolate flavored lollipop. They have 2 regular factories now. One is in South San Francisco, which focuses on the creams and truffles, and then there's the one right here at 3431 South La Cienega in Baldwin Hills, which focuses on peanut brittle, bonbons, and nuts and chews.
I love it.
The bonbons are still hand dipped, and each maker puts their own signature swirl on top of each of them, so you could almost tell, like, it's burning. This is Susie.
Yeah.
The brittle is made by 2 machines named Tweety and Sylvester. They don't have any signature. The candies that fall on the floor in the factories are sent to farms to be fed to pigs, which is a life one can only dream. And I saw those pigs racing. They're racing for a box of See's chocolate. Didn't even touch the floor? I'll be there. They still use only the best ingredients. There's never any preservatives, and their eggs are all humanely sourced. The original recipes of Mary C that they still use today are for the peanut brittle, chocolate walnut fudge, Victoria toffee, the bonbons, and the maple walnut creams. I can't tell you how hungry I am right now. I'm sweating. I'm so hungry. They sell over 1 billion pieces of candy a year and give over 1 million free samples every year. I feel like a good percentage of that is mine.
Yeah, if they give 1 million, say like 990,000 go to you.
Hey,
I go to
they
malls.
offered. Yeah, I got a lot of shopping to do.
They offered when I asked them.
80% of all of these sales happen around Christmas, Valentine's, and Easter. They now
and
have
my grandma's birthday.
They now have 250 locations in 17 states. That includes Japan, Hong Kong, and Macau. And about 150 of those 250 locations are in California. And their employees seem to love working there, and they're deeply dedicated. A lady named Dorothy Gray Forbes was the one who designed all their ads and also the candy box design with like the little cottage that they still use today. And she worked there for 50 years just designing stuff. Cher used to work at See's Candy in LA before she met Sunny, and she's still like, I love See's. I used to work at See's. If you follow Cher on Twitter, which everyone should.
Which we all do.
A great follow.
When you download Twitter on your phone, it comes with
it's like that U2 album that everyone got. Their fans are just as dedicated as Cher. It's pretty cult-like, and it's also mostly still a West Coast thing, so it's on the same level as people's devotion to In-N-Out without the Republican stuff. And the store is good to all of us in return. In the 80s, they discontinued the maple walnut creams, and hundreds of people wrote in demanding that they bring it back. So not only did they bring it back, they gave all those people who wrote in gift certificates to get free candy. After the Northridge earthquake, they even gave 40,000 pounds of chocolates to people living in shelters. I'm still waiting for mine. In 2001, they came out with a See's Candy Barbie. Try eating that. Yeah.
She works there? Yeah, or her skin is just like,
ooh, maple. No, she works there. And I bring her in and I try to collect her paycheck. They won't give it. One final thing on See's, because it feels like all my stories had to end with some connection to this. The Baldwin Hills factory is where 2 wacky ladies named Lucille Ball and Vivian Vance went to spend an afternoon learning how chocolate factories work to get them ready to film that chocolate episode.
Really?
So